This podcast may contain strong language and adult themes. Bonjour and welcome back to another edition of Voice Notes from Connor, the podcast where I'll be listening to old voice memos and notes from my past self and responding as my present self with some guests along the way. However, there are no guests in this episode. It is just me. You're stuck with little old me and my old self. So we've got two voice notes from my past self today. Let's take it away. I feel like the quicker you strip away any kind of social and cultural expectations, as soon as you strip away, I should do this, I should do that, and just do what you want to do, it is the most liberating thing in the world. A short one there from me, but an interesting one, I would say, overall. I can't actually remember recording that one, about social expectations. So we're going to go less political in episode 3 and more sociological. So yes, as I said in episode 1 about the dash of politics, you got a lot of politics in one go in episode 2, so not so much maybe in this episode. I think something that we should all try and live by is the mantra that should is could with shame. So every time you say to yourself, I should do this and I should do that, the SH there at the start is basically attaching shame to it rather than you could do something. So, for instance, a lot of my life, I exercise and try to maintain a healthier routine and, obviously healthy mental well-being as well as physical well-being. But something that I've struggled with in my life is exercise. So I like to do a lot of exercise. I want to keep fit and healthy, but I also struggle with that. And I often think that's connected to my neurodivergence and what at this point I think is maybe ADHD. So a bit of autism, a bit of ADHD, like it's just extra neurospicy basically. And I think that's where I kind of get this play off between the two, where on one hand, the ADHD side's like active, let's do things. The autism side's like, can we actually not? Or maybe it's just my personality where it's like, can we just not do it? And should has been connected to that a lot throughout my life, where it feels like I should go for a run, I should do a weight training session, I should go out for a long walk. But every time you say that to yourself, it's like you're shaming yourself and forcing yourself to do something. It can feel self-critical as well. So actually saying could instead can be a part of stripping away those social expectations. I think as a neurodivergent individual as well, I think a lot of neurodivergent people do internalize a lot of those social expectations. So I think everyone does. But I think maybe even more so with perhaps autistic people or ADHD, OCD, with like internal masking, for example, and maybe even having to learn certain social cues and social expectations. There's more of a internalization of those things, and you can do this as a neurotypical person as well, but you develop quite a self-critical voice. So in terms of this, like stripping away social expectations, one method is saying, I could go for a run today. I could do a strength training session. I could, I don't know, maybe my social battery is running quite low, and it does run quite low these days, especially when I'm at work full time and, work is intense, is I could go and see my parents. I could go and see friends, or I could go to the cinema, whatever it is. And when you do that, it is really liberating. I think therapy helped me with that. I think I had some life coaching as well, and that also helped to strip away that, to try and untangle those things that weren't really me, that over time I had internalized and thought I should do this, I should do that. I see it all the time, people talking about this, and now I'm aware of it. You become very aware of how people have internalized these like made up social constructs and social expectations that you kind of question, like, why do I even believe in that, or why do I want to do that? And stripping that away does become really liberating, and that can be in terms of like your identity, I was going to say the habits that you do, but mean more like the hobbies that you do, your habits, your practices, your routines, etc. As you get older, that also, so if you're a younger, I'd like to consider myself younger, or on the younger end of the spectrum at 31, but if you're a younger listener, so like in your teens and stuff, it can be quite hard to do that when you're forming your own identity and you perhaps have more anxiety and nerves around how you're perceived. It is more challenging, and it's like a cliche at this point. I'm not saying anything new, am I, to say that as you get older, you start to ignore some of those social and cultural expectations and things that people put onto you. And it does get easier as you find yourself more and you're able to accept yourself more as well. So, for example, I used to go on holidays. So I still do go on holidays, but by myself. And when I first started doing solo holidaying, which I enjoyed so much, so good, because I get to have my splashes of socialisation, get to go out to bars and meet people and have a chat. Well, I'll say that. Normally it's fun. Very recently in Sitges, so I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sitges, which is south of Spain near Barcelona. And I went out to a bar. It's called Parrots Bar, which is one of the more popular gay bars there. And Sitges is known to have gay, a thriving gay culture and gay community there. I sat down and had a chat with an Australian woman who constantly asked me, what am I into sexually? There's only two genders. The shirt I was wearing that evening was ugly and I should change. So I was like, usually I really enjoy meeting new people. And this was like, oh God, I'm an introvert as it is. This might push me back into my shell even more. But usually it's a very positive experience. After that, I did actually meet some really nice guys and had a nice time. But the solo holidaying, now I'm kind of in my groove more. Whereas for a start, it was like I felt like every day I should be doing something, and I should go to this landmark and go to this gallery and this museum, and I need to put photos on Instagram and Facebook and X, and I should do all of these different things. Yet I'm on my own. Like, what am I doing? It's like I'm on my own. I can do what I want. I can eat where I want. I can do all those things. But I think what I'm trying to tell you is this is maybe you might resonate with this, is how much some people, I can speak for myself here, how much people internalize these expectations and what you should do to please other people. I've been a people pleaser all of my life. As a young, neurodivergent, queer, working class person, who was quite shy and introverted, who grew up in a very working class family who were loud and brash. Men were very masculine, very manly. I became a people pleaser. I didn't want to upset anyone. I didn't want to rock the boat. I enjoyed people saying, "Oh, isn't Connor a lovely boy? How lovely is Connor? He's so sweet and doesn't, never misbehaves and all that kind of stuff." But also like that, then as you carry that people pleasing with you throughout your life. So then I'd be like, oh, but when I go back, so and so said that they want to see all these photos. So I've got to take all these photos on my holiday, and it's like, come on now. Like, you can literally do what you want. If you want to just lay in your bed all day on holiday, lay in your bed all day on holiday. It's absolutely fine. But it takes so much time to get rid of that. Because in Sitges recently, I was thinking to myself, but I should go to this part. And every time I have to catch myself, I'm like, come on, Connor, your mantra is, should is could with shame. Yeah, I still do it. It takes time to get rid of it. But I suppose really the message here is, and from my past self as well, is to remind my future and current self of this, to keep doing that, keep practicing that. My message to you is as well is to try your hardest to do that. It is really difficult. It can be anxiety inducing, but the more you work on that, the more you work away stripping what is other people's critical voices, what have other people said I should do, and what have I thought I should do, and as you unravel that like a Russian doll and keep taking it out, or you in therapy we use the analogy of me, I can't remember what film it was now, is this big blue camp bird, and it was always about working toward Connor becoming this big blue camp bird. And a huge part of that was, I can't be this big blue camp bird because I am so bound to all these different expectations. So I think I mentioned in another voice note, one of the episodes about, go and get therapy if you can afford it and stuff. And I'm just repeating myself again, really. But yeah, I do think that if we can start getting rid of some of those social expectations, you really do find your quality of life improving, and find some love for yourself as well. I didn't love myself for a long time, and on RuPaul, he always says, how in the hell can you love somebody else when you don't love yourself? Wait there, was that correct? How in the hell can you love someone else when you don't love yourself? Something like that. I've watched that show so many times, but for some reason I can't quite remember which way round the phrase is, but you get the meaning that if you don't have that love for yourself, how can you love someone else? Which I don't fully agree with, because I think you can have a love for a family member, a friend, a romantic partner when you don't fully love yourself. But really what that means is that how can you give yourself fully? How can you be secure and comfortable in that dynamic if you don't love yourself? Because when you do love yourself, you have that comfort. It's like you become your own best mate, and you've got your own back, and you can say to yourself, I will get over this. I can help myself. I can improve this. Of course, there's other people in your life that will do that. You don't want to lean in totally to a neoliberal, individualistic, me all the time. I don't need anyone, lonely person. Of course, you can still ask for help and get other people in your life to help you with things. But if you can do that for yourself, it's so powerful. And some people you might be sitting there now saying, I can't do that. Well, try if you can to get professional help. But if not, start with small things, right? Like on a Saturday, you might say to yourself, I shouldn't just binge watch a series with my favourite chocolate and sit around all day. I should go and be productive. That's a huge thing. A lot of people say in my life that I feel like I need to be productive when I'm off work. And I think, no, there's so much joy in just sitting and just going for a stroll and not really doing much. It doesn't always mean you're going to be it's not like the golden bullet to be fully relaxed and grounded and mindful, but it's an important part of it. So even if you start with those little things, do you know what? Tomorrow, it's Saturday, I'm going to intentionally get up and I'm going to intentionally binge watch and with, some of my favourite food and just relax and not keep thinking of that critical voice that maybe I got from parents or other people in society or friends that have judged me over time, and actually just do what I want to do. And hopefully you will cultivate a bit more love for yourself and that comfort within yourself. And that's why I can do solo holidays. I've lived by myself for nearly 8 years now. I've not been in a romantic relationship for nearly 6 years. And people will say to me a lot oh, are you looking for someone? Are you dating? How's your love life going? And I just think, will you just leave me alone, because I'm just myself. I'm just little old me. Just leave me alone. I enjoy my life. I'm introverted. I want to sit at home on the weekend with my New England IPA and some reality TV and just doing that. And I am genuinely happy. I genuinely am. And this is the call for action. Love yourself and strip away those social expectations. So past Connor there really gave me a lot to talk about there, Evan, wasn't it? It was got quite deep, I suppose, and you found out a bit more about me. So there we go. So should we move on to the second voice note, which is, I think we've got 2 voice notes in this episode, so let's go on to that one. Life-changing piece of advice that I've just seen. Every time someone looks at you, or you think someone's looking at you and judging you, or you're thinking about, what is someone thinking about me? You're never actually ever going to know what they're thinking unless they obviously tell you. And even if they tell you something, it could be a lie. So this is where we could start slipping down quite a nihilistic rabbit hole with all of this. But actually it can be really positive, because when someone's looking at you and you think they're judging you, try and let your mind go blank, because you literally don't know that their face could say, can't stand that twat. But actually inside they're thinking, God, they look so good. Why don't I look like that? Or whatever. They could be thinking about something about themselves. It's not even about you. Something really positive, something really negative. But it's Schrodinger's cat, because how are you ever supposed to actually know? Oh, if only we could know what people are thinking all the time. And people ask you these superpowers, which one would you like? Would you like to know what people are thinking? Yes, sometimes I would actually, and I'm going to go slightly back on what I've just said there. Because sometimes then I think no, because why should I know? Why could I care? So should is could with shame, but no, like will that actually change something? I think in some dynamics it would. In others, like for strangers walking down the street and they think, God, those jeans look terrible on Connor. Oh well, I enjoy wearing them, so that's that. Whereas obviously if it was a family member or friend who had quite a harsh opinion of you and you could read their thoughts, then they were going down another rabbit hole. That'd be very upsetting. But episode 2, the theme was politics and more than a dash of politics, whereas this episode is definitely themed around mindfulness, psychology, self-improvement, which I'm very much into. So I didn't talk much about that actually in the introductory episode, but that is a big part of my life, as you've probably gathered from this episode so far, that going through therapy and life coaching and lots of other things that have consolidated that as well, I would add. So a lot of shadow work, the work that you do outside of those settings. So things like mindfulness practices, going for walks, meditating, sound baths, breath work, cold plunges, cold showers, all these different things. When I tell people like, Jesus Christ, I'm like, well, yes, that's how a lot of neurodivergent people have hyperfixations, and mine for quite a long time I was hyperfixated on self-improvement and improving my mental health because it's something I've struggled with for all of my life. I will come back around to what I said in the voice note, but I'm going the long way around. I'm taking a bus here instead of a taxi. When I was younger, I struggled really badly with anxiety and low moods. I wouldn't necessarily always call it depression, but it definitely was low moods. I think I was connected to ADHD. So if a lot of people might not know this, but a core part of ADHD is dopamine deficiency. So the part of your brain that gives you like motivation and like a reward system, if you like, alongside things like serotonin, you're actually you have less than neurotypical people. So that means you can feel lower, and your brain is actually structured that way, unfortunately. And that's why some people with ADHD will have an impulsivity about them, where they're seeking that dopamine through like alcohol and drug taking and risky behaviours like related to sex or drugs or other different acts. So I think actually now I'm older, I know that was a part of it. As young, introverted, neurodivergent, queer Connor, was a lot going on there, which queer listeners out there might be able to resonate with, and other people, of course. But yeah, so being like younger and being really anxious. I remember it was in my early 20s, I said, watch something on This Morning. And I was sitting there with my parents and I said, do you know what? I'm so thankful that I've not struggled with like bad mental health in my life, like anxiety or depression. A couple of years later, I had multiple issues with my partner at that time, was really struggling. I remember going to my grandparents' house, put the radio on. Michael Bolton's How Am I Supposed to Live Without You came on. I love a bit of Michael Bolton. He's the male Celine Dion. We'll get more into my music taste, I think, in a future episode with one of the voice notes that I've recorded. And just burst into tears, was crying and like so upset. And suddenly I realised, actually, my brain told itself I didn't have these issues, yet I had them all of my life. Like literally all of it. And then obviously doing therapy, all this other stuff. A big part of that, as I've talked about already, is like social expectations, internal masking, all that kind of stuff. But also the fear of being judged and the fear of being perceived. I can't stand being perceived, which a lot of neurodivergent people can resonate with. So what I mean by that is if you don't understand what that is I don't, just people looking at me and acknowledging my existence. I just want to be a little old me, like floating through the world, doing what I want. I don't need someone to tell me there is 2 genders and you are a man, or I don't like what you're wearing, or I don't like how you did this thing. I just can't, we just sort of frigging exist. I just want to exist. And that like, it's such a huge part, right, of like our culture. I talked about it in another episode about being judgmental and how we're all judgmental in some way, and there might be hierarchies, moral superiority, some forms of judgment are better than other forms of judgment, etc. But that like element of feeling judged from other people can affect your life so much. Like when you're in school, I was an in-betweener, so I wasn't really popular, nor was I I want to say it in a nice way, but I wasn't like really nerdy or geeky. Thankfully, I wasn't really bullied or anything, but I was very much an in-betweener. But you know, like the popular kids. Maybe you were a popular kid who you're listening now, if you've ever actually acknowledged that. And then they look at you in a certain way and you just feel so judged by them that they think you're a piece of shit, that they don't like you, all this kind of stuff. But you never really know what's going on, do you? You don't know what they're thinking. So this can also be like a really positive mental framework. I mean, this really, Evan, we should get people to pay for this episode because this is basically like free therapy at this point. You can thank me in the comments. But yeah, so like if you can think to yourself, right, I don't, like you think to yourself constantly, I don't actually know what they're thinking. And I used to have a friend actually who used to be very, very much like steadfast in that she knew what people were thinking about her. She knew this person was judging her. In her brain, she got so far down the rabbit hole that it was really hard to come out of that, to fight the voices in her brain that were saying, no, you idiot. Yes, they are thinking bad things about you. You can do it. Of course, we have spectrums here that people struggle with their mental health. But having that as a positive framework, again, is very liberating, as I mentioned in the podcast, in the voice note before. It's a really liberating thing to think, do you know what, actually, rather than my brain keep filling in the blanks, someone's just looked at me in a weird way, they think I'm ugly, they think I'm fat, they think I'm this, they think I'm that. I'm going to say to myself, I don't know, actually. They could have looked at me and thought, oh, they're quite nice. Or they could have looked at me and thought, I'm going to absolutely smash that sausage and mash for dinner later. Like, how do I know what they're actually thinking about me? So earlier I was saying about being perceived. So that's that thing of like being judged and people perceiving me. So when I was in Sea Cheers, when I've been in San Francisco, when I've been in gay bars, that's quite a big thing for me because I almost don't want to be perceived in a good or a bad way. Like I don't want to be perceived as a sexual object and be the recipient of the gaze. G-A-Z-E, not G-A-Y-S in this case, or both actually in this case, but be a recipient of the gaze and be the object of the gaze in any way. Like, even if it's like, oh, Connor's attractive, I like Connor, or oh God, Connor looks awful, or they're ugly, or whatever it might be. I don't want anything. I just want to just exist. But yeah, I think the moral here is if you can, the moral of the message is if you can just keep thinking to yourself, I don't know, unless they explicitly tell me, of course. If it's not an explicit, like written or verbal thing that someone has informed you, then just keep saying to yourself, I don't know, I don't actually know what they think of me. And the shackles will slowly come off and you'll feel like your true self. And imagine a society where everyone is their true self, where everyone is able to achieve their potential and is actually pushed to achieve their potential through talents from sport to singing to filmmaking to all sorts of different things, but also just like in a psychological way, that we're all loved, that we're all valued, and that if we have that as a core aspect of our society, how just like much more fun life would be. And I was saying in episode 2 about right-wing people and their kind of cruel attitudes. A lot of right-wing people will go against this, right? Like, that's not an aspect of right-wing politics. So in the comments, in an email, whatever, you can tell me, yeah, well, right-wing people do believe in that. Well, where's the proof? Where's the receipts? There aren't any. It's clearly not a thing on the right-wing end of the spectrum, hence why I'm solidly on the left side. I also think coming from a working class background, so other things, right, so like your race, your ethnicity, your class is going to affect this. So if you think of the intersections of my identity, so growing up, so like not neurotypical, not straight, not cisgendered, not middle class, and white, so there's privilege there, the societal and structural privilege there, but in lots of other ways there wasn't that. And growing up working class, that was such a thing, like the gay looking at other people and judgment was a huge part of the council estate I grew up on, and maybe others. You look at someone, what are you looking at straight away? Why are you looking at me? So wired. People could be so sadly wired to think straight away someone's got something negative to say. And you're around that, and there's me like, I don't want to be perceived, just going to the shop for a Dr. Pepper and a twirl. And I've just looked at someone and they've gone like, what the fuck are you looking at? And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thing there, because they would say that to me and I would just be thinking, was thinking about my Dr. Pepper and my twirl. I wasn't actually thinking anything about you at all. And then as you grow up, some working class people can get a bit of the word has gone, like a complex, like a bit of a complex about it. Like when I was in academia doing my PhD and I go to conferences, middle class academics looking at me certain ways, I'd think, oh, they're horrible. They're judging me because I'm from a different background to them. Or tennis. So I played tennis for a long time. I played tennis like quite competitively from the ages of 13 until about 28, 29. So I've stopped in the last couple of years, and I used to play in the Leicestershire Tennis League. So I wasn't like county level or national level, but I played to quite a high level. It's quite competitive. That's where to feed into stereotypes here, the more masculine side of my non-binary identity would come out, because I would be quite surprisingly competitive and passionate and aggressive when I was playing tennis. But tennis is a very middle class sport. So again, people could be looking at me and thinking, oh, he's a good tennis player, or he's a nice lad, or whatever they were thinking when I was 19, for example. But I'd be thinking, fucking snobby bastards are judging me. They're looking at me in this certain way. They've got these perspectives on me I don't want them to have. Whereas now, I still go to watch the tennis, and it is an undeniably middle-class sport, right? And I go down to what we call the Leicestershire County Championships, where there's loads of matches on. It's fantastic. It's a free event. It's really good. And there's lots of middle-class people there. Now I have to do it as like a practice where I'll be like, right, Connor, before we go in, we're not doing the judgment. I'm not going to be judging them, and I'm going to try my best to, if someone does look at me, even if someone said something, which they never really do, let's be honest. But if they did, that's their problem. That's their business, what they think of me. It's not mine. So to conclude this episode, just keep telling yourself, unless they say you don't know, and if you don't know, you can make it positive in your head. Your brain instinctively could go, they think you look terrible in that outfit, whereas you could just replace that over time with, oh, they think you look nice in that outfit. It's not easy, but give it a go. And thank you for tuning in again. And like I said, we should have billed you for this episode. There's a lot of wisdom, I think, if I say so myself, that I was giving out there, that I've learned over the years. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you'll be back for episode 4, and I'll see you there. So ciao for now. You've been listening to Voice Notes from Connor. Created, hosted and starring me, Connor Winterton. Produced and edited by Evan Greaves. If you'd like to get in touch, you can message us on TikTok and YouTube. And if you'd like to get in touch via email, our email address is vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. You can send us any feedback, any thoughts on the episodes, as well as your own voice notes that might make it into future episodes or future series. So that was vnfcpodcast@outlook.com. Thank you very much.